guys, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my May wrap-up. So this month I definitely was slacking a little bit, and I say slacking, I do feel like I got into a reading slump about halfway through the month, maybe even a little bit before that, and my reading just didn't really come back. I did read some really good books near the end of the month. I definitely read some manga and stuff to try to get me back out of the reading slump, but I have still just been a little bit slumpy, and I do think part of that is because I've been doing live playthroughs of Mass Effect, which I absolutely love, but I'm definitely one of those people that gets a little bit like obsessed with certain things, and I have a very one-track mind when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I am so focused on Mass Effect right now that reading has definitely been on the back burner. But even with that said, I did finish 14 books in the month of May, and I read 3,805 pages. For the formats of the books that I read this month, I did read 5 ARCs, 1 ebook, and 8 physical books. The age ranges of those, 1 was middle grade, 6 were young adult, 1 was new adult, and 6 were adult titles. And then for the star ratings, I did have 1 DNF, which on here is a 1 star, but it is definitely not a DNF that I would say should be a 1 star, and we will talk about that obviously. 1 was a 3.5 stars, 3 were 4 stars, and 9 were 5-star reads. So overall, even though I actually didn't read for like 11 days out of the month, I am very happy with the amount of reading and the quality of reading I did end up doing. So now, going through our books that I read in May, we are going to go from the lowest rated, or the DNF, all the way to my favorite book of the month, with some exceptions. So the book that I did DNF this month is Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. This is 100% a me problem. This is definitely not a bad book. I was just having a lot of issues reading it for me personally, and I do think this is what started my slump. So the main thing about this book is I got it as an e-arc, and there is a lot of dialogue that I want to say is like in a dialect. It's not necessarily in an accent. I don't even necessarily know if it's a dialect or not, but these characters have a way of speaking, and in this book it is written in English. I wasn't able to tell if it was written in English or if it was written in the languages that the book was talking about, which I believe is Malay and Hokkien. I hope I'm saying those correctly. But there is a way that a lot of people in this book have of speaking that confused me. I have an issue, and I've always had this issue, where if a book has accents written out phonetically or has some sort of dialect, I have a really hard time focusing on it, and I will read one line multiple times struggling to figure out what it is. This happened to me with Huckleberry Finn in high school. This happened to me with Ring Shout last year, and this also happens sometimes when I read Star Trek books and Scotty is in the chapter because they write his dialogue in Scottish, and I have a really hard time trying to figure out what that stuff means. And so while this wasn't necessarily phonetically spelled out, there were a lot of words that the characters would say, not even necessarily bad grammar, it was just more things that would show up in the wrong places, or it didn't make sense in the sentence for me, and I was really struggling, especially since our main character and the internal dialogue that the main narrative of the book makes up, I had a fine time reading, but because like more than half of the book is her talking to other people, I was not able to figure out everything that was going on. It was making my reading so slow. I was going through this so slow, kept putting it down because I was getting frustrated with myself for not understanding it. I did get to the point where I wanted to try the audiobook, and I think I did like 30 minutes of the audiobook. It did help, but I'm also not the best audiobook reader. I have to follow along in the book with an audiobook, otherwise I don't understand it. So I decided, at least for now, I am DNFing it. I'm going to take a break. Hopefully I will come back to it. It is supposed to be a like urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy type of story about our main character who ends up moving to Malaysia after her grandmother has passed away and finds out that her grandmother was like a medium to the Blackwater Sister. It also had a lot of like literary contemporary vibes, a lot of stuff about her not getting along with her family or trying to figure out how to talk to them and relate to them, and that also turned me off because that wasn't what I came there for. So I might give this another try in the future, but as of right now, I did DNF it, although I 100% do not believe this is a 1-star DNF, even though that's what I normally give all the books I DNF, you know, like if I absolutely hate what I'm reading. I just didn't get into it enough. The 3.5-star read was The Last Fallen Star by Gracie Kim. This is another one I had as an e-arc, and it is the first book in a new series under the Rick Riordan Presents line. This one has Korean mythology, and I was super excited to read this one. It focuses on 2 sisters, one who has been adopted, and they're trying to figure out how one sister, the one who has not been adopted, can share her magic with her adopted sister, because in this book, this group of Korean Americans, I don't actually know how big and expanded this group is, but this group specifically seem to all be Korean Americans, and there's different subsets in this like magical world. They have magic. Some people have healing magic, some people have like premonition. It's a whole lot of stuff there, and I was very intrigued by the whole like magic system and the mythology. I did think the world building needed a little bit of help, and I did not like how quickly the ending and stuff was progressing in this story. I felt like we had so much stuff going on. We went from here to here to here to here to here so quickly that we didn't get enough explanation for it. It is the first book in a series, and while we did sort of conclude the first arc, I'm very curious about how this is going to continue, but that's why it's a 3.5 and not like a higher rating, is because there was some stuff I was really intrigued by, but I didn't feel like I got enough explanation for it. But I really did love the like Korean mythology and magic stuff going on. Oh, that was so much fun. Moving into my 4-star reads, the first one I have here is Trickery by Jamin Eve and Jane Washington. This actually was a buddy read that I read with Lana from Lauren Lullabies, and this is a reread for both of us. I had previously given it 4 stars. I do think it still lived up to the 4 stars. I definitely want to continue in this series, but this is like a fantasy romance. We didn't get much romance yet, but we definitely are going to get romance. I do believe it might start in book 2, but this one follows Willa, who is a dweller. She is one of the really lower class citizens. We have dwellers, and then we have souls, who are basically like the chosen people by the gods. They have the chance to, when they die, ascend to godhood, and because Willa is a dweller, she can't do that. The best that she can do is go to a school and learn how to serve the souls. And she's not the best student, so she shouldn't have been going. However, she always seems to get herself into crazy situations. She is super clumsy. All of like the bad luck that could possibly happen follows her, and so she does end up going to this school with her best friend, Emmy. I absolutely love Emmy as a character. I love their friendship, and Willa is a little bit over the top, and part of it is because of her clumsiness, which does have a point in this story. I've read the first 2 books, so I don't know everything, but I do know that we start to get a little bit more clues that there is a point to a lot of this stuff as we go further into the series. But she is very over the top. We are in Willa's head, and so sometimes her thoughts just seem to be so out of place and so random that she's actually the main reason I gave this book 4 stars instead of 5 stars. I love the humor and the snark that is in this series, and it is going to be a reverse harem romance, which actually means we're going to have like a poly relationship, multiple men that are going to be interested in Willa, and we're slowly getting there, like I said before. And so I'm very curious to see how this continues. I'm hoping Willa comes down to earth a little bit, even though I know they're not really on earth, but some of her crazy actions, or the fact that we know she's very clumsy and accident prone, don't always lend well to some of the choices that she makes. They seem out of left field, and I know they're to progress the story, but I hope that in the future books in the series it makes a little bit more sense of why she chooses a certain thing, because right now she's a little bit all over the place. The next 4-star read I have here is Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. This one I also had as an e-arc. I really enjoyed this story. This was billed as a Princess Diaries meets Crazy Rich Asians type of story, and I don't really know much about Crazy Rich Asians. I actually DNF'd that book years ago, but I love the Princess Diaries, and this definitely lives up to that. I think it has the perfect vibes for like a teen rom-com movie. But basically this follows our main character of Izumi, who is 18. She's finishing up her senior year in high school, and she finds out that her father is the Crown Prince of Japan. And so she ends up going over there to sort of see him and meet him and see how his life is and that kind of stuff. But that means she is also, I think, the crown princess or a princess of Japan. And so her coming from living in America, California, I believe it is, and then going over there, she has a lot of like stuff to learn. And I really did love her as a character. There were a couple times that she felt a little bit naive. And I mean, she's 18, but she felt more naive than all the other decisions she had made in the book. Like, it just felt a little bit too much, like going in one direction versus the other. But overall, I really enjoyed this one. Like, I would love to see this as a movie. Like, it would be so perfect. It was a great read. And then the last 4-star read I have here is Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Kane. So this one here fulfilled the Buzzwordathon prompt to have a book with house or home in the title. Presley actually picked this one out for me, and I really enjoyed this. This is the first book in a like thriller series, and yeah, I did not like it as much at first, only because we are so focused on our main character trying to keep her family safe. This book actually has a prologue, and it's in the summary on the back, where our main character figures out that her husband is a serial killer. And then years later, her and her kids are living in a different town, and stuff starts to happen. Another body comes up in the lake near where they're living, and it looks like a copycat basically of like what her husband did. And so she's having to deal with a lot of stuff. I really did love her as a mother. She's such a strong mother, and like I really related to a lot of that, but the first half of the book or so was a lot of her being super anxious and trying to keep her kids safe, which I completely understand. Like, we definitely had to deal with a lot of like potentially like PTSD stuff. We didn't have any diagnosis for it, but there was stuff like that in there where she was definitely trying to deal with what had happened in the past with her husband. And I do appreciate the fact that we got that. It wasn't just glossed over. But once we actually got to the point where stuff was happening and it looked like either people were trying to kill her or frame her, like, I'm not gonna give anything like away really, but it could have gone either way. I really did like once we started getting into the action, that kind of stuff. She is such a good character. I love the fact that she's like middle-aged, has 2 like teenage kids, and is having to deal with all this shit. It was really good. I actually own the entire series, and so I definitely want to continue. Now, moving into my 5-star reads, I have 9 of them. However, this one is really going to not have an order. I have basically all of the graphic novel comic stuff and manga that I read this month in my 5 stars. I do have one book, which is actually my favorite book of the month that I will talk about at the end, but all of the comics and graphic novels and manga, I can't physically separate those into like this was my least favorite and this was my most favorite, because I really love them all. So I just sort of put the comics first, then the manga, and the manga's in alphabetical order by title. So that's what we're doing. So the comics that I read this month are Once and Future, Volume 1, The King is Undead, and Volume 2, Old English. These are both by Kieran Gillen, illustrated by Dan Mora, and this one was the TBR bucket pick for May. I previously read this first volume last year, 5 out of 5 stars. I just really love it. It's a take on King Arthur, of like people trying to bring him back to life, and he is not the good guy. One thing that I absolutely love is we have a grandson-grandmother duo here, and she is my favorite character in this whole series. She is a badass granny. When she was younger, she used to like fight monsters and go on quests and stuff, and I absolutely love her. And then this second book was the new one that I wanted to read. This one is still a 5 stars. I, at the beginning, wasn't too sure about it because this one brings in more mythology stuff. It actually brings in Beowulf. And again, I'm not going to get into it too much, but I do not know anything about Beowulf. And so I was very confused for like the first half or so of this book. But I actually feel like some of the stuff that later on came with the Beowulf mythology helps that I didn't know what was going to happen, because a lot of what's going on here is the people that are trying to bring back King Arthur are trying to like recreate the myths. Like this one person is made in the image of one of the knights. So they do follow a lot of mythology stuff. And so I do think it would be helpful to know Beowulf going into volume 2, but at the same time, I do think some of the stuff paid off for me personally because I was surprised by it. I did not know the mythology. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. I really love this. The 3rd volume of the comic should be coming out again sometime this year, and I definitely want to read it. And then for the manga, 2 of the volumes I read are Blue Flag volume 6 and 7 by Kaito. This was like my favorite manga series of last year. I absolutely love this series, and volume 6 and 7 lived up to that. 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this. This is a series that follows Taichi and Futaba, who are 2 classmates who slowly begin to develop a friendship, and then they also have other friends, and so there's just like this friend group. One of our guys in this story is gay, one of the girls in this story is a lesbian, and so people are trying to deal with coming out and crushes and all this kind of stuff. It is, I don't want to say heartbreaking, but heart-wrenching. Like, I feel the emotions so much. I absolutely love these 2. Volume 7, like, how dare it end the way it ended, because it wasn't even necessarily a cliffhanger. It just leaves it open for volume 8, which I believe is the last book in this manga series. And so I'm just like, I need it. And when I bought these, volume 8 wasn't out. It actually might be out by now. I'll have to check, but I need it desperately because I love this series so much. Then I also read Boys Run the Riot, Volume 1 by Keito Gaku. This one I did read as an e-arc and then bought myself a copy as soon as it came out because I loved it that much. This is the first volume in, I believe, a 4-volume manga series that is now slowly coming out into English about a trans teen who is trying to figure out his identity with his family, his culture, his school, and when there's a new boy in class, they decide to make a fashion brand and sort of figure out his identity through that. This is another one that I absolutely loved the emotions I had. It was so well done. One thing also that I appreciate, there is an author interview in the back that is talking to the author about basically his experience and how this is an Own Voices manga. I have never seen an Own Voices manga, especially for a trans character. I could be wrong about the whole like maybe LGBTQ aspects that have like gay or lesbian or bi characters. I just don't know for sure if there's any Own Voices for that, but for this one, like, it just made everything so much more poignant for me because a lot of this is based on his own experiences, and I definitely need to continue in this series. This was so good. The next manga I have here is Lovesickness by Junji Ito. This is the newest short story collection by Junji Ito. Absolutely loved it. It is right up there with Shiver for me, which was previously my favorite. I actually don't know if Shiver or Lovesickness is my favorite because it's been so long since I've read Shiver that I don't fully know, but this was so good. This has 10 stories, and the first few of them actually, let me double check how many there are. The first 5, so half of this book, the first 5 are actually in the Lovesickness story arc, and they were phenomenal. I absolutely loved those. There were a couple other stories. I think it was the Strange Hikizuri Siblings. I do believe I've actually read those before, somehow, some way. I don't know for sure. So those were my least favorite in the collection just because I already knew about them and they're not as creepy as some of the other ones. They're unsettling, but they're not as creepy. But then even the other short stories, when there's only one short story, it's not part of an arc, even those were so freaky and phenomenal. Like this Lovesickness arc, that whole like half of this book, one of my favorites. It was so well done. So yeah, this is definitely a 5-star read, up there with Shiver for a short story collection by Junji Ito, and I have no idea which one is my favorite. And then the last 2 volumes of manga that I have here are The Promised Neverland by Kaiju Shirai, volume 6 and 7. So I started reading The Promised Neverland last December, absolutely loved it. I actually read a couple other volumes last month. This is such a good series. I started this on anime first, actually, and so I watched the first season of the anime before I even started reading the books, and that is such a good anime as well. Like, I can't even actually tell you anything about this actual manga. You have to just go in not really knowing anything to volume 1. This is a book that follows a group of orphans at their home where they're living with their mother, who is the person that takes care of them, and they find out stuff and things go from there. The first season of the anime actually ends halfway through volume 5. So this is volume 6 and volume 7. It's wholly brand new to me. Everything is going, like, I can't predict where anything is going because it is so weird, but I absolutely love it. I definitely need to pick up more. I actually would have picked up volume 8, but when I bought these at Barnes & Noble, they didn't have 8 or I think even 9 in stock. So I do need to continue. I just need to get the next volumes. And then the last book, and my favorite of the month, is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This I read as an e-arc. I have not purchased a physical copy yet, but it is going to happen because I absolutely loved this book. This is my first Christina Lauren. I know I'm way behind. I actually own a couple other ones from them and I just haven't read them yet for whatever reason, but I really enjoyed this one. This one follows Jess, who is a single mom. I don't know what it was, but I ended up reading Stillhouse Lake and then The Soulmate Equation, like one right after the other, and so I had 2 really awesome mother characters to attach to, and I absolutely loved both of these books. Like, the characters were so great. But yes, we have Jess, who is a single mom, and she ends up being convinced to join a like trial study of a new dating app that is going to come out that basically compares your DNA and different things from your DNA to find out how compatible you are with people. And then, not only that, but she ends up being a like 98% match with one of the creators, Dr. River Pena. River Pena is one of my absolute favorite like love interests in a book. I loved him so much. He is like quiet, nerdy, a little bit awkward, a little bit antisocial, I don't know, but I absolutely ate it up. And I loved Jess as mom. I loved her friendship with Fizzy, who is a romance author. So even though this book is a romance, we had a great friendship as well in this. Like, all of her relationships with people were so well written. She felt like a whole person. They all felt like real whole people. It was so good. I loved the science aspect as well. It wasn't too much in this book, but it definitely was a part of it. And then also the heat level in this book was like perfect for me. We did have some sexy scenes in here, but nothing was like a paint by numbers. Like, one goes into this, you know, it was a mood, and I loved that so much. I definitely need to read more from Christina Lauren because I seriously loved this book. I read it within less than 48 hours. Might have been a little bit more than like 24 total hours, but I devoured it. And that is going to be everything for May. 14 books, not bad at all. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos up Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye!